I'm Sean Fennessey, and this is The Big Picture, a conversation show about aliens. If we're talking about an alien movie, there's only one man to join us, the xenomorph to my face hugger, Chris Ryan. What's up, buddy?
Should I do the John Hurt thing?
That's a Zin cough, really, more than anything.
What if that was an unexpected side effect of 6 milligrams citrus Zin?
When an alien bursts through your chest live
xenomorph?
on a Rewatchables recording.
Xenomorph.
Oh, man.
Dude, why are we giving this away?
I don't know. The cross-marketing that could be happening for all your interests.
Aleya, we have to do like a sketch where like a Zin alien jumps out of my chest. I think that would really help Sean's pot. It's struggling a little bit.
Programming note before we get into all things movie news and aliens. The Hollywood Hack begins on Monday. 3-part series hosted by our buddy Brian Raftery, covering the 2014 data hack that happened in the aftermath of the announcement of the Sony film The Interview. Talked with Brian about this on the show earlier this week. Brian also was a guest on The Town this week. Great conversation with him and Matt Bellany. If you liked those conversations, if you're interested in the ramifications of that hack, and there were a lot, please check out that show Monday, Wednesday, Friday of next week on the Big Picture feed. Please listen. Okay, quick news. One, I just wanted to say, rest in peace, Jenna Rollins.
Yeah.
Died at 94, one of the great actresses of her generation. I know you're a big fan of the films of John Cassavetes, as am I. Her work in all of his films, and she acted in nearly all of his films, is astounding. She's set the benchmark, I think, for what we could deem independent actress. You know, she's really an icon of independent cinema. Shadows, Faces, especially A Woman Under the Influence in Opening Night, Minnie and Moskowitz. She's probably best known for her work in her son's film, The Notebook, which I know is a big movie for you. Any notes on Jenna Rollins?
One of the bravest performers I've ever seen. One of the most vulnerable and in some ways like basically humble because of what she was willing to put of herself on screen. And I think anecdotally, based on like Criterion closets and letterboxed 4s that are now proliferating everywhere you look on social media, one of the most influential performers of like even this current generation of actors and actresses that you're sort of seeing emerge in movies now, where every single person, it seems like, is like A Woman Under the Influence is one of my 4 like most treasured experiences watching movies.
It's interesting how Cassavetes persists. You know, like he obviously had a huge boost in the 90s where a lot of people were discovering his films, and then Criterion, I think, you know, reissuing all those movies in the 2000s. Everybody had that set on their shelf if they were cinephiles. And I think you're right. From an acting style perspective, all of those movies that she appeared in, where she seemed to be breaking the rules without ruining the movie, is, I would say, something that she does really well. You know, a lot of people cited that moment where she's waiting for her kids to get off the bus on A Woman Under the Influence as such like an electrifyingly strange moment in movies, you know, where you don't know where something is happening and you're nervous and excited at the same time while watching her. Just an amazing performer. Go check out those movies if you haven't seen them. Okay, I'm actually really glad you're here for this bit of casting news. This is a double shot of CR and Sean interests.
Yeah.
The first one is that there was an announcement earlier this week that Dominic Sessa will be starring in an Anthony Bourdain biopic produced by A24, directed by Matt Johnson, who most recently made the Blackberry movie. Anthony Bourdain is one of the signature cultural figures of your life. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, he was responsible for like a lot of an awakening I feel like I had in my adult life, whether it was like through his traveling and introducing me to food, which I've since abandoned if anybody listened to Grand Budapest Hotel rewatchables, but just a way of looking at the world. Very influential. And obviously like really meant a lot to me, and it was very tough when he passed.
So what do you make of this?
Everyone gets a turn in the cuck chair. That's it's like, if you love something, don't hold on to it too much because it's going to happen. I'll be honest with you though. I love Blackberry. I think Dominic Sessa is really interesting as a performer. And I think this will probably concentrate, if I had to guess, on his young, wild, upcoming days, maybe like in Provincetown or wherever he worked out on the Cape or in Nantucket or something, and maybe some New York stuff. So I wonder if this is going to be a little bit more of a angry young man story than it is going to be like the last days of Anthony Bourdain, which I think would be a little bit unclassy.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we're going to get either. And I think if you've seen Blackberry, you know that Matt Johnson is not one for classic hagiographic biopics. That's not really the kind of thing he's interested in. He'll probably look for a way to upend the structure and style of telling
I wonder
the
if
story.
he's going to draw a lot on Kitchen Confidential and some of the anecdotes and kind of like, this is how restaurants really work stuff.
Doesn't that
like,
feel a little beat to death, though? That's the
Bear,
one thing I thought when I heard about this. But The Bear, but that book was adapted for a TV show, and it had been, it has been kind of worked over a lot. I was wondering if it was more like what you were describing.
I wonder if we'll get into. I mean, one of the things that's been sort of fascinating to see wrestled over with his posthumous, the culture that's come out of like his death, whether it's memoirs or recollections by his friends and also documentaries and stuff, is what a complicated figure he was, and kind of like trying to reclaim the person from the myth. And I wonder whether this film will engage with that at all.
I hope so.
Yeah. But this is just like, if you're a Bob Dylan fan, the Bob Dylan movie's coming for you. If you're an Anthony Bourdain fan, the Anthony Bourdain movie's coming from you. If you're a Mufasa fan, the Mufasa movie is coming for you.
Let me tell you about the Mufasa movie. Watched it on a large screen with my daughter recently, the trailer. Yeah. And she was like, I want to see that. So now she's 3.
I thought she's more of a guardian of the lore of Lion King, although also something of a free jazz improviser.
Yeah, sometimes she'll be like Scar's the hero. And this film suggests perhaps what if he could have been.
Alice was right.
Yes. So I'm interested. It's sort of a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but for the Pride Lands. I'm interested in that. Just flipping the script. Okay, the other piece of casting news that I want to talk about is yesterday it was announced that Nicolas Cage has been cast as John Madden in a forthcoming biopic, which is going to be directed by David O. Russell, just days after George Clooney melted David O. Russell's soul in the pages of GQ, as communicated by our pal Zach Barron, who profiled Clooney and Brad Pitt. So John Madden, Nicolas Cage.
John Madden, Nicolas Cage, David O. Russell. I think that's the last
the
part
first
is
two,
important.
Interesting.
That being said, I'll make the case for it.
Okay.
David O. Russell's a pretty good sports director, sports movie director.
Yeah, well, that's Philly bias, but okay, keep going.
Or he has made 2 films at least that have sports at the core of them that I thought were 2 of his more successful movies.
Okay.
Nicolas Cage is obviously coming off of kind of a Cage-assance, although still.
I mean, Longlegs, huge hit.
Right.
Huge hit.
Again, I'm curious what part of Madden's career they'll be focusing on. If this is going to be sprawling across all of it, is this just going to be him with the badass Oakland Raiders teams and Kenny Stabler and kind of have a 70s American Hustle feel? Or will it be like the lovable guy on the bus with Pat Summerall? I don't know. Which one do you want? I mean, I think we know what we want. We want the gunslinger out in Oakland, right?
Well, unlike the Bourdain idea, which if that spans his whole life, I'll be disappointed and kind of frustrated. I'm not opposed to a kind of snapshot series of portraits of Madden's extraordinary life.
Do you think we'll get to the bottom of his bus trauma? Like why he always needed to be on a bus?
I'm sure it will be explored. I mean,
the fact that why? Was he almost in a plane crash?
He was afraid of air travel. I don't know what he was afraid of specifically. We probably should be asking Brian Curtis these things. He's sort of like the guru of the John Madden myth. Brian Curtis should probably be consulted on this movie. Cage is a coin flip. Cage is fearless and likes to go big, and Madden was a big personality. I'm not sure if I would call Cage a mimic. Aside from Charlie Kaufman, I can't recall him mimicking too many people.
No, I think he very much will make this his own.
Yeah, so that's a gamble. I like what Cage has been up to, though. I think he's actually he's been able to still do the like straight to VOD stuff on the side while exploring Pig and Longlegs and more tourist fare. So I don't know. Dream Scenario, I think also was kind of underrated. I'm on board for anything he's doing. David O. Russell, I mean, did you see Amsterdam?
No.
I think it's just gone. Like, I think he's just lost it. Like, I was a fan. I really liked Three Kings. I'm a big fan of I Heart Huckabees. I was very dubious about the Silver Linings, American Hustle, Joy trajectory. And now I feel like it's kind of like, in addition to the fact that...
Well, then he was also making an Amazon series.
Was he?
Yes.
And then it went away?
I believe so.
Okay.
I that seems to have been memory hold, or I thought it was in production, though.
Yeah. I mean, he's also somebody who obviously there's been an enormous amount of personal revelation about him, and he just seems like just not a very nice person. So anytime something like this comes along, you're like, ugh,
right.
This is the guy who's going to make the John Madden movie. It's a little bit frustrating, but I'll watch it. I'm always going to watch it. Stay tuned for that. We'll see if it actually happens. Shall we pivot to Alien Romulus?
Let's do it.
This has been certainly among the most anticipated movies of this year for you and I. We are probably like upsettingly loyal to this franchise, even though I consistently have notes about all but 2 of the movies in the franchise. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I love it so dearly and I feel like I can criticize it. And that's really how I come to Alien Romulus too. So I mentioned Fede Alvarez is the director. It's written by Rodo Sayagoyes, the same writer that he writes all of his movies with. Stars Kaylee Spaney, David Johnson from Industry, Archie Renault, Isabella Merced, Spike Fern, and Eileen Wu. Just a very young, mostly unknown cast.
Yeah.
Interesting choice.
Kind of a contrast to the last 2 films, the Ridley Scott origin story films, Prometheus and Covenant, which had just absolutely gangbusters ensembles all over the map.
Charlize Theron, Idris Elba, Michael Fassbender, Catherine Waterston, very well-known people. So this movie is set notably between Alien and Aliens. And it's about a group of space colonists, really space pirates, who launch off a mining colony in an effort to hijack some floating materials on a space station in an attempt to escape their sort of like
they're orphans
draconian
of
existence.
Miners. So like their parents, a lot of their parents are dead. They've been trapped on this mining colony called Jackson Star that basically has like a little bit of the Andor prison thing going where like you think you're almost done with your contract and they're like, we've added 12 more years to your contract. So it's a very like Dickensian kind of urchins trying to escape thing.
And they do in fact go up to this space station, and of course, what do they encounter there? But facehuggers, xenomorphs, lots of aliens, lots of remnants of alien exploration. So I'll start with did you like the movie?
Yeah, I liked it a lot as a horror movie, and I thought it was a pretty good Alien movie.
Yeah, I generally agree with that. That's pretty much where I'm at.
My favorite thing about the Alien franchise, which I think, and this is, I think, fainter praise than it sounds like, is my favorite franchise of all of the kind of like current, blue chip, reliably financially rewarding.
Divergent 2, 50 Shades of Grey 3.
Well, actually, can we put Maze Runner aside? Because I think that's just simply the greatest story ever told.
That's right. It's the Dollars trilogy, and then it's Maze Runner.
It's Scorch Trials, and then it's Once Upon a Time in the West.
Okay, good. Glad we got that off the board.
I love these movies because they can be anything that they want them to be.
Yeah.
They can be straight up slasher. They can be crypto-religious origin stories, and they can be prison break movies. They can be, and in this case, it's a haunted house movie. It's like they create the world of this space station that's sort of dead floating above a mining colony for some reason. And it's called Romulus and Remus, which is the 2 brothers who one of whom founded Rome in myth. I have to admit, I did a little bit of reading about that last night, but I don't quite understand the connection between there's usually a lot of Joseph Conrad and Prometheus has tons of biblical allegories, but
it's not quite as clear a connectivity between Prometheus and fire and what the power of the alien and that
and the
very
black goo
symbology there. I'm with you. I think this has been an interesting experience watching people respond to this movie. And there are a couple of choices that are made in the movie that have gotten people's hackles up.
Yeah.
We'll talk about them. We won't spoil them until a little bit later in our conversation. But I found this to be a very effective mid-tier genre movie.
Yeah.
And those are not as easy to make as you think. Fede Alvarez is a very skilled craftsman. And this is a movie that relies a lot on his craft. He's also the writer of the film, and he expresses like an incredible amount of affection, maybe too much affection for the franchise writ large. Even still, there were moments where I was genuinely scared, where I was genuinely excited.
Or in awe.
The third act in particular, I think, is incredibly creative and fun.
Yeah.
And that being said, how you feel about the idea of the legacy sequel and what is fan service versus what is, I think as Adam Naiman put it in his review for The Ringer, the fine line between fan service and clever continuity.
Yeah.
And because this is a movie wedged between the 2 most beloved installments of this movie, I think it's going to come under some significant fire. There's a couple things I didn't like about it. I did ask Fede Alvarez about one of the big choices, and I liked what he had to say about it, and it made me a little bit more at peace with the decision that he made.
Okay.
How do you think about fan service now, especially with a franchise that you really like?
Well, this kind of goes back to the Bourdain thing, which is that if you want to, I think if we basically started every podcast we did raging against the snake eating its own tailness of a lot of the movies that we see these days, then we would just kind of like run out of steam.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount that I guess I have to accept. I was sort of surprised to see it in this film because, and I guess I understand why when you look at the like, I think broadly speaking, Prometheus and Covenant are looked at least as commercial failures, if not critical failures. Now, they are very dear to my heart.
Yeah.
But I think I understand why this movie made an effort to kind of get back to some of the source material, if even in how the characters dressed. It's more right in that sweet spot between Alien and Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
People are wearing the high tops. People are wearing overalls. They're wearing coveralls. They look kind of like they're at least dressed like that. Now, I think crucially, unfortunately, they don't have the verisimilitude that the casts of Alien and Aliens did, even though I liked a lot of the performances in Romulus. But it's strange to see something that's actually so terrifying and in some ways about like the evils that men wreak on each other because of their creations or whatever. To see it try to like be like, remember this cool moment from Aliens when they hold a pulse rifle? They're doing it again here. I'm like, that was never like a sentimental moment for me. And it's strange. It's sort of strange to see that echoed. In fact, it reminds me a little bit of like some of the Deadpool and Wolverine stuff where I'm like, who was feeling nostalgic about the Human
Elektra.
Torch? Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think there are a couple of moments of fan service. For example, the utterance of a very famous line from Aliens that will have some people clapping and some people groaning. Those are overt. Those are iconic
That
moments.
exact reaction happened in my theater. There was like a couple of like, huh. And then there were a couple of people like, yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that this movie is going to do that. I think it's going to be divisive in that way. Fan service in general, I think if it's clever, I tend to enjoy it. Like I think I was an even bigger fan than you were of the two most recent Scream movies. I thought those were...
No, I like
You like them a lot?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I think we both really enjoyed those. And self-awareness is kind of a signature aspect of the Scream movies. This movie is doing things very knowingly, but it is kind of po-faced in the way that it tells the story. You know, there's nothing snarky or smarmy about Alvarez's storytelling style. He's just like a straight-ahead thriller guy. And so there's one in particular that we'll spend some time discussing and how we feel that fits. Because the comparison that this movie has gotten the most I've seen is The Force Awakens, which is that it repeats some of the general structures of the original stories. It attempts to recreate or re-show signature moments or even characters from those original films, despite being 30, 40 years in the past. And it's fun and feels safe, but also kind of empty. And I think one of the great things about the Alien franchise, in addition to it being this kind of portal for auteurist creativity, is it's very thematically deep. And this movie is not very thematically deep. And I don't really think that's a bad thing. I don't think every movie needs to be a lodestar for questions about, you know, isolation and science and the way that corporatism infects our lifestyles. That's obviously something that literally happens in the movie where we watch somebody it's communicated to her that she's like going to continue to be a corporate slave. Yeah. But it's not, there's nothing subtle about it. There's nothing thematic surrounding just the plot
I think
action.
it's probably a course correction from Prometheus and Covenant and probably what was supposed to be the third David movie and the ideas of, you know, real like myth making in front of us and using John Spaeth's and Damon Lindelof's like ideas and John Logan's ideas to like kind of really push the boundaries of like what you, I mean, I don't think it really wanted aliens in those movies so much as the goo, like so much as like the primordial, what is this thing that reacts to the people that are in the room with it and takes their intentions and like reflects it back to them. You know?
Yeah, he's such a defensive genius. Like and I don't mean that in the John Madden sense of the word. He's very like,
he's like Vic Fangio.
Yeah, he's very ornery about his creations, and I think he's simultaneously a little bit like wounded about the quote unquote failures of Prometheus and Covenant. But also, he's the executive producer of this movie. He's been promoting it very aggressively. He clearly worked closely with Alvarez, gave him a lot of notes on the movie, and obviously he's financially incentivized to you know support it. But there is definitely some elements of Ridley Scott vision in the movie. It just feels like processed in the same way to me that Prey felt processed for the Predator universe.
For this one, I would just say that if there was any theme, and they may have stumbled upon it. I know that this film has been in development for a while. There was an initial like idea that this was going to be, you know, I think it was basically completely unconnected to the sort of storylines of any of the other films. Then there was also like a rumor for a while, or maybe it was because it was going to be based on a video game to some extent, that like Ripley's daughter would be the main character, and this would be while Ripley's in like cryosleep in between the first two films. In any case, I do think that this film happens into a AI critique, and a sort of our reliance on technology and what that actually gets us in the end. But maybe that's almost more because of like how prevalent that is in the papers today than it is rather than the film itself.
Yeah, I wonder how self-reflexive this movie actually is in its creation, because the same could be said for the way that corporate continuity is what is most important, what the quote-unquote company wants, in this case, 20th century studios needing to be able to proliferate the Alien franchise forevermore, and, you know, artists and young people coming in and having to make something that they're excited about, but also feels a little bit crass. You know, like it could be a movie that is kind of in conversation with itself. That's a generous reading. I think like the ungenerous reading is just like they're just trying to make a buck. You know, 20th Century Studios is super interesting now because they keep going through all of these properties that that Disney inherited during the Fox acquisition.
Like Predator, right? Because they did Prey, right?
They did Prey. They did the first Omen. They did the most recent Planet of the Apes film. These are movies that are trying to rebirth, you know, to create a
quite literally in some cases
rebirth. Yeah, these valuable franchises, and do them in ways that are both familiar but different and progressive.
I admire them for taking some chances on some like really interesting takes on the material. Like
cool filmmakers, I think.
Yeah,
too.
And that's the thing is like it's like Prey was awesome. You know, first Omen was really good. Like these movies are obviously like there's like a kind of melancholy that I have that like even at the movie last night, man, like if you time those AMC movies wrong and you just sit through 25 minutes of trailers and you just get so bummed out by the end of it, where you're just like The Crow and Mufasa and like all these movies that are just like we had this thing, it was going to expire, we had to make it, or somebody was like, one thing we haven't tried yet is Mufasa's story. You know, like, and you're just like, oh my God. And then you get to the movie that you're watching, and then that movie is also doing all this, like, remember these sneakers? They're cool.
This is my life, man. Yeah. I live inside. I see all of these movies. Yeah. So yeah, I totally relate. I didn't quite feel that way. I had a lot of fun here.
All that being said, like Fede Alvarez and all these guys who are
Wes Ball, Arkasha Stevenson, Dan Trachtenberg. These are interesting directors.
Wes Ball,
that's your boy. I know. Your Scorch boy. Are you a Scorch boy?
I'm more of a death trial lawyer. Yeah.
So I think we should probably start spoiling it to talk about some of the details of the film. So if you haven't yet had a chance to see Alien Romulus, let's say skip ahead about 20 minutes. We'll be ranking the Alien films. I'll start with some of the fan service stuff. The most significant thing is that a kind of digital resurrection of Ian Holm takes place here. Ian Holm, of course, the great British actor who portrayed Ash in the original Alien film, the synthetic who turns on the group of
the Nostromo's crew.
The Nostromo crew. And he's recreated here not as Ash, but as a character called Rook. And Rook is a science officer who they discover on this abandoned space station that they've gone up to get this kind of payload from. And there we see that he is, you know, again, a representative of the company, and he still is operating. And because of that, he has a mission, which is to capture the alien and the alien's goo and do whatever it can for Weyland-Yutani to kind of proliferate the aliens.
He's basically trying to reverse engineer the goo that you see in Prometheus that they find on that planet to essentially create a species that can do all the things that humans can't on these colonies that Weyland-Yutani is terraforming. Which we'll see more of in Aliens, obviously, but it's essentially to make it like people who don't get respiratory diseases in mines and people who can terraform without, you know, needing any cryosleep and things like that. So yeah, he is dressed exactly as Ash. He is found in the same state as Ash is found.
Almost position.
Yeah, where he's basically been torn in half. And what did you think of this?
I didn't like it when I first saw it. I had no idea it was coming. I wouldn't say I was like emotionally distraught when I saw it, but I thought this is a movie that has exceptional set design and some really good digital and and practical effects. It's a movie that looks and feels good. And this was the first introduction of very obvious CGI. And so set aside the kind of like ethical quandary of recreating an actor. Ian Holm is no longer with us. He passed in 2020.
This is
So that's a bold choice to make. I just didn't think it looked that great.
No, especially for how practical the film feels, how tactile the film feels. You start the movie with this incredible sense of what this colony is like and what this world is like beneath the space station, that all these people are basically trapped in this permanent night where they work tirelessly until death for Weyland-Yutani. And then you get up into the space station and it's essentially the set of aliens, and an android from Alien. You know?
Well, so the thing that I found particularly frustrating about it is the film is very deliberate in the first 20 minutes. It really takes its time, if not necessarily deepening the character arcs of the Kaylee Spaney character, who's our star, the David Johnson character, who is the android, who is sort of her brother/companion.
Named Andy. Yeah.
Yes, Andy. And we'll talk about them, and they're both terrific in this movie. But, you know, also this cast of pirates who are trying to compel her to go up with them so that they can use Andy. I was on board with all of that. When they get up to the space station and they start showing us face huggers, I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, Fede Alvarez is really good at nailing the tension of a sequence like that. And then shortly after that, it introduces the Rook character, and it took me out of it for about a few minutes. It took me out of the tension that was being built, and it took me out of the character's concern because I was trying to wrap my head around, one, just the way that it looked, and two, the fact that it's not Ash, but it seems exactly like Ash.
The case for it is that in most of the movies, there's a David and a Walter. There's Bishop shows up like in 3 and in Aliens, but is actually like in William Gibson's version of 3 was supposed to be one of a main character. He shows up at the end of Alien 3 in Fincher's version as Bishop's creator. So there's priors for they made a version of an android and it looked the same everywhere. This just could have been like literally name any cool British actor. Like this could have been Liam Cunningham. This could have been Michael Fassbender. This could have been so many different versions of this, and you would not have had the like, why are we corpse fucking here? Like, with all due respect to the great Ian Holm, that's what it felt like for a while.
So I'll encourage people to listen to what Alvarez had to say about this.
I'm excited to hear it.
I think the way that he explained it, I thought was incredibly respectful and thoughtful, and he has considered all of the criticisms. He basically ultimately was like, some people are going to like it, some people aren't.
Yeah.
We thought it was a good choice, and we think we did it respectfully. You can listen to it when it gets there. So that's really the one piece of hardcore fan service that I didn't love.
There's lots of Easter eggs.
There's small stuff. There's like little references, like, you know, very early on in the film, you see the kind of like the water bird that like bounces back and forth, a paperweight that is very memorable from the first film that is on that big circular table where the John Hurt chestburster scene comes from. And throughout the film, there's like 10, 20 of those. Alvarez and his co-writer are kind of obsessed with these movies, so he's kind of dropping them in. Some of them were satisfying, some of them you'll miss. Are there any that you really liked or didn't like?
I didn't love Get Away From Her, You Bitch.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like raging in my seat about it. It was just sort of like, that's Ellen Ripley's line. Like that's very much rooted in, is rooted in her trying to protect Newt. You know what I mean? Like now I get Andy's also trying to protect Rain. So there is like a relationship there, but I don't know. That's like, that would be like, I don't know. You can't really, that shouldn't transfer, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think there's
like when Andy, or I think when the, sorry, I forget the character's name, the last remaining human male like lead.
The Archie Renault character.
Archie Renault character.
Yeah.
He's like showing her how to use the pulse rifle. It's essentially Michael Biehn showing Ripley how to use the pulse rifle.
Yeah, that's Tyler.
Right.
That was okay.
Yeah.
I agree with you that I don't have a big relationship to the pulse rifle mythology in these films, so it's not something I care about that much. But even just the very practical stuff of, you know, Rook dealing with Mother and the computer and the, like you said, the tactile, like the buttons and the interface and the screens and all of that stuff feels very familiar but good. It doesn't look cheap. It doesn't look, you know, I just rewatched Aliens in the 4K reissue, which has been making some noise recently.
Because he took all the grain out,
He took all the grain out. Yeah, James Cameron, who also said, you know, you need to get out of your mother's basement if you are worried about the grain.
You don't have that problem. You're in your own ADU.
I was in a basement of my own design. And, you know, my very quick thought about that point is that I don't really care about the grain. The issue that I have with what he did to Aliens is it makes the setting of Aliens look like movie sets now because everything is so clearly defined and lit.
Yeah.
And so without any darkness, you can see things that feel constructed rather than lived in. It's a small note. It's not a big deal, but it does make a difference. Anyhow, this movie feels dirty, grimy, gritty. Not as dirty, grimy, and gritty as Alien 3, but it feels like it's a leftover space station.
And it has the mechanics, just to go back to like the thing I was mentioning in the beginning, of a haunted house. Like there are dark, creaky stairs that they have to go down, pathways that are obstructed, stuff growing on the walls. There's even like a weird gondola system that they have to go down at one point. There's a big elevator shaft sequence. There's so many things that feel like they could be like a Tower of Terror type thing, and it's very effective. I don't think, the last two movies were largely set on like these alien planets and were much more outdoorsy, for lack of a better term. So to get back into the claustrophobia of a space station and turn this space station much more into like this ghoulish thing that's been basically floating like a dead rock. And so like what would have happened if aliens were able to proliferate inside of it is really, really cool.
There's this added layer of tension where, the space station and the adjoining ship are in the proximity of an asteroid belt, essentially. And so
it's a really good, like, it's a really effective storytelling mechanism to be like, there's this countdown constantly happening.
Yes. I think that for the most part, the visceral set pieces work really well. Like you have listed a bunch here, but the one that you didn't list is the first one, which is when the two men, the sort of like snarling, rude guy, Bjorn, and Tyler.
The two dudes from Skins. Yes. But even though they're not, like.
I was going to ask you, like, Britain and America, is that like why do people have accents in the Alien universe?
I don't know.
Okay.
I also don't know why it was like these are like two Cockney guys.
But Rain just has an American accent.
Rain's from Kansas. Yeah, I don't know.
And Andy has a kind of non-accent, a nondescript accent entirely. Anyhow, those two guys are going exploring in this ship. They're trying to get cryo fuel.
Fuel cells for their cryo sleep pods because they want to basically fly to some nice planet.
They find that the cryo fuel chamber has been flooded, and there are a series of face huggers that are gestating.
Yeah.
And they've been unfrozen, and they start splashing into this water that is, in this flooded zone.
Yeah, that was great.
Cool scene.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
It was exciting. It was scary.
Yeah.
It was really well executed.
And the whole time while this is happening, so these two guys have been locked inside of this lab. You can see the facehuggers defrosting, and then to get out of the lab, they need to essentially put Rook's computer, his hard drive, into Andy. So up until this point, Andy has been kind of Forrest Gumping it and telling dad jokes, but like having epileptic seizures and is shaking and kind of like useless as an android.
He's a malfunctioning old model.
Mice and Men action going. And then they put Rook's AI into him. And David Johnson does an incredible job with this.
He's so good.
First, they have like this terrifying, like almost him being possessed scene where his eyes have rolled back and he's like standing stock still as he almost summons these aliens out of hibernation. But then when he snaps out of it, he's athletic, decisive, knows everything about like the situation. And it's a great turn by Johnson because I was watching it and I was like, man, this guy's really good. I hope he doesn't just kind of humble bumble through the entire movie. And it's a really, really, really cool twist.
Oh, great casting choice bringing him in too, because he is on Industry at least, and even in Rye Lane to some extent, the rom-com that he was in a couple of years ago, very kind of sly actor, someone whose face you're always trying to read. A little bit quiet. And in this movie, he gets to do a lot. For an android, he's very expressive.
Yeah.
That sequence in particular, I thought was great. And it kind of kicks off the chaos of the movie because then at this point, facehuggers have been unleashed throughout these two ships, Romulus and Remus, and xenomorphs are being born and xenomorphs are being summoned. And the film takes on, like you said, that kind of haunted house chaos that is generally really exciting. Did you have a favorite of all of the set pieces in the movie? I
thought that the chest burst, Eileen Wu's chest burst into the spaceship crashing, their shuttle crashing into the Romulus's like hangar bay, which is shot essentially like a really, really awful car crash and does really effective things with like when it cuts to outside, it'll be quiet, and then it cuts to inside the spaceship and it's like chaotically loud. Isabella Merced's character, Kay, is stuck with Eileen Wu's character, Navarro, as she's foreshadowing a birth that we will later get. But this chest burster comes out, I thought higher than it did on John Hurt.
Most certainly. It was more like in the
heart
breastplate
area
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is probably
not
fatal.
ideal. Yeah, not ideal. She kicks it right away.
Yeah. Which is a shame because she was awesome.
She's a cool character. Yeah.
She is awesome. I thought that I have a big kind of thing to say about the ensemble, but she ruled. And basically, like, it's this chaotic like thing where Isabella Merced's character is getting like thrown all over the spaceship as it crashes.
Yeah, and a facehugger has just been born, basically.
Yeah.
I like that scene a lot too.
And then I also loved I love the acid blood death. Have we seen that before?
I mean,
when Bjorn gets dripped on to death?
Yes, that was really gross and very effective. This, of course,
this is the thing. This, I will say this. I can imagine a lot of people being like, well, this and well, that. This movie's for shooters. Like, this movie's for my killers.
Yeah.
It's for guys who are like, oh, yeah, slow drip acid blood death. Haven't seen that before.
When I talked to Fede Alvarez, he was like, do not forget, I am the man who had blood rain at the end of my Evil Dead remake. You know, he's like, I really live this life.
Yeah.
And he does. He's really into extremely gnarly stuff. I've seen some people say like, oh, this isn't even that gnarly. It's pretty fucking gnarly.
The chest burster scene coming out of Eileen Wu where it goes out, it cracks her breath. I'm sorry for describing this so intimately, but come with us.
Great.
Walk with us. It jumps out. It sprays so much blood on Isabella Merced's face, and then she lets out a truly awesome horror movie scream.
I wish that scream had not been. It's spoiled in the trailer, which is unfortunate.
I didn't watch the trailer.
Yeah, that was very smart.
Like, just the teaser, and then I was like, I'm done.
It is a great scream. Those sequences are both great. The final 20 minutes of the movie.
This is like I almost feel like they were like, if you do X, Y, and Z, they being Bob Iger, who I'm sure was deeply involved in this film.
A lot of script notes.
I feel like there was like, hey,
he was originally cast as Rain in this film. Bob Iger, yeah.
If we can make, it was almost like this trade-off where it's like if you pay homage and put this little Easter egg in and do this, and it's Ash and it's the Nostromo is flying around in pieces and there are these references, then you can do the most fucked up birth scene ever.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because I was sitting next to my wife watching this last night, and she was just like, "Oh my God, are they going to do this?" Like, she was like, because there was this whole thing where you find out that Kay, Isabella Merced's character, is pregnant about midway through. And I actually got annoyed because I was like, now she has protective armor on.
Mm-hmm.
She has character armor.
We can't kill her. Yeah.
I was wrong. To an extent, you were
wrong.
They couldn't use her,
well, she died. And then she effectively saved herself by
shooting
implanting
black goo
herself
into
right.
her
exactly.
body. Yeah.
That cocktail that the Ian Holm character is sort of cooking up.
Yeah.
Which earlier in the film we get this sort of like Chekhov's goo moment where like we're about to hit Tyler with it, and then they pause and they don't give it to him, and that turned out to be a good choice. But later when Kay takes it, clearly it transforms her seed.
Yeah.
Into something unique. Now, I will say, like, even before that scene and what transpires after that, you have these two huge action set pieces.
The elevator shaft.
There's the anti-gravity sequence in which aliens are encroaching and they're trapped and there's no way out of the airlock. And the only move, and I hadn't seen this before, although you pointed out to me that there was a version of this in another film.
In the William Gibson script, there's a zero gravity thing.
But so she hits the zero gravity button, and all of the xenomorphs start floating, and Rain and Andy are holding on.
Yeah.
And she starts shooting all of the aliens with a pulse rifle. And of course, the xenomorphs have acid blood. And so the blood floats.
Yeah. And then she does a little bit of a Night Fox move.
She does the bedtime ballet through the acid blood, which I thought was really fun. I mean, it was very CGI, but I thought it was a very clever idea. That's immediately followed by this incredibly thrilling elevator shaft sequence in which they're all being chased by xenomorphs.
They're
climbing
floating,
up.
and then this gravity goes off, and it's cool.
And then that is followed by
something from the director of Don't Breathe.
Yes, truly. The first thing I did when I got out of this movie was texted Amanda and said, "You cannot see this movie under any circumstance."
Like, I don't even want to describe it to her.
It's really fucking gnarly. And of course, Kay does give birth. She gives birth to a xenomorph human hybrid.
A little bit of Alien 3's man baby alien, and then
Alien 4.
Oh, Alien Resurrection.
Yes,
right. Yeah. Sorry.
There's a bit of Alien Resurrection, kind of monster human xenomorph, and a little bit of...
I thought it was more Engineer.
The Engineer.
Yeah.
So it's this sort of like...
Because it's the goo.
Giant humanoid alien.
Yeah.
And it just turns into a crazy monster movie for about 15, 20 minutes. And I thought it worked. I was like hooting and hollering. I was like, this is so fun.
I want the Sixers to bring that guy in on a 10-day. He seems like... He can really protect the
Do you think they considered casting Boban in that role? He's kind of got some Boban energy.
That was fucking terrifying.
It was great.
Yeah.
And the movie is really, like you said, it's really having fun. Fede is having a lot of fun doing all of this stuff. And, you know, it's ultimately it's a fun roller coaster blockbuster at the end of a long summer full of IP. Is it my favorite Alien movie? It's not my favorite Alien movie. It's going to be tough to rank these because the bottom is really boring and the top is really boring.
Yeah.
And so really all of the discussion, I think, is very concentrated within 4 movies.
May I just ask you before we move into the rankings, just about the film itself? How did you feel about the ensemble, the casting? This is one of the hallmarks of Alien movies, I think, is just really, really, really top-notch casting. To me, this was most similar to Alien 3, where, you know, Alien and Aliens, at least this is hard because it's retroactive, where you're like, it's Bill Paxton and Michael Biehn, but maybe Bill Paxton and Michael Biehn weren't household names in the moment Aliens came out. Obviously, Michael Biehn had been Terminator and everything, but you know what I mean, right?
I don't want to oversell my enthusiasm for Kaylee Spaney. I think she's very good, but she's
awesome.
She's gonna be very famous.
Yeah,
like and we're gonna look back and be like, that was crazy when Kaylee Spaney was in an Alien movie
and in Civil War in the same year.
Yes, Civil War and coming off of Priscilla.
Yeah,
so she's on an interesting run now of kind of doing something that we praise a lot of other people for, like, you know, Timothée Chalamet, Florence Pugh, like high and low. You know, prestige, small indie, and also franchise stuff that is pretty cool. So I think it will look back. I don't know how famous David Johnson will get, but he's a very, very good actor.
Yeah.
The other people I thought were like, they were fine, but I was not very familiar with them.
I thought it was just missing. This is like saying it was missing like a 320 hitter with 40 homers, but it was missing like Harry Dean Stanton, Rafe Spall, Danny McBride, like that, like the thing that you're like, oh, this guy's in it or this woman's in it. Like, this is awesome. Like Amy Seimetz in Covenant is so good in what she has to do.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I don't know if it was like a budgetary thing to use really unknown actors. I mean, these guys a couple of these people have been in like Netflix shows and
very, very short careers.
Yeah, but they are very much in the beginning of their career. They're very much unknowns. There was some charm to that, but there was also like, these films do not spend a ton of time on character. So you get, in the beginning of Alien, famously, this Robert Altman sequence of them talking over one another during breakfast after they've come out of cryosleep. But you know and care about them so much after that scene. And you kind of understand their dynamics with each other. Throughout this film, I feel like they constantly had to be like, I don't like you because you were present at a mining disaster that my mother and father perished at. You know, it's like a lot of exposition rather than feeling like the characters are very lived in. But that being said, I really liked Eileen Wu, and I really liked Isabella Merced, whose character seems like kind of like a nothing part in the beginning and then kind of explodes over the course of the character. Well, literally over the course of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a very intentional choice that they made because the last 2 Alien movies in particular were movies about incredibly stupid adult scientists. Like everything that all of the actors do the characters do in those movies is just like, why would you do that? Like, why would you touch that? Why would you go near that? It's kind of a signature aspect of these movies. This is the first one where it was like Gen Z are full of morons too.
Yeah,
like that's kind of the point.
You're not really giving Neil Armstrong right now, but okay.
It's like, I thought that was a funny idea.
Nope, not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So if you stumbled upon a pulsating egg.
Yeah. If I was asleep for 9 years to get to that egg, I would say, I say, who are your guys?
Egg, are you into like Dio Sabbath or Ozzy Sabbath? Like, what's your preference?
I think the things that these people witness and see is like, you're supposed to imagine that they've traveled in cryosleep to see pyramids and giant faces on an alien planet. Wouldn't you be like, we got to hang out and touch this?
If you come across the engineer's little landing pad, you know, his little rocking chair.
Yeah.
Are you like, I'm getting on that bitch?
Space jockey? Yeah.
You're getting in there. You're riding into the future. All right, that's good to know. I'm not going to space with you.
Okay.
I just want you to know that.
Because you want to have a movie theater in space. You want to not be disturbed. You don't want to explore. What do you want to do?
Just relax.
Yeah.
Vibe out. You know, smoke a pie stick. Just eat some Cheetos. You made a good point here. When I have this question, what is the future of this franchise in the document? And you reminded me that Noah Hawley is currently at work, I think, on an Alien series.
It's coming soon. I think it has been, the shooting has ceased. Yeah.
And it's called Alien: Earth.
Yeah, or it might just be called Earth. I don't know. But it's set before Alien. It's set before Prometheus, I believe. I think it's going to maybe... The rumor is, like, I think Noah has been in contact with Ridley Scott. They've been talking a lot about it, but I don't know how much it will honor Prometheus in terms of, like, some of the mythological leanings of that and origins of that stuff.
And I think one frustration point that I think hardcore fans of the franchise have is that Scott had intended to do 3 films as prequels to kind of conclude this story, and he hasn't gotten a chance. It was
going to be the David trilogy, which is what's so interesting about this franchise is that we think about it almost like it's like Friday the 13th, where there's so many of these movies, but it's like really actually there are 4 Ripley movies and 2 David movies, now Romulus, and then the Alien versus Predator movies, which it depends on your point of view whether those are real or not.
They're effectively not canon when you go back and look at those movies.
They tried to make it canon. There's like Waylands and Utanis and
yes, in fact, Lance Henriksen plays Wayland in those movies. It's interesting that it's Alien Earth. I assume there are going to be xenomorphs on Earth.
It's about it's like corporate machinations of the Wayland Corporation, and I think the rise of the android technology. But no aliens in it. Then. Obviously there will be aliens, but it's reminding me a lot of Legion in terms of like it'll be tangentially like X-Men.
That is really risky.
But it's Noah Hawley show. I mean, like
I'm interested. Obviously, he's really talented, especially at making TV. But if the word alien isn't like the word alien is not in the title of Prometheus,
I know,
but it is in the title of this show. But it's set at a time before the. Anyway, who knows? I will happily watch it. It's notable.
I would be shocked if there's not a xenomorph in the first 5 episodes of this. There's not going to. Yes. They can't do it.
Yeah,
I think that this is a really good question about this franchise, though, which is, do you look at it as a reliable thrill ride?
Mm-hmm.
Do you look at it as a sci-fi epic that has canon and it has things you're supposed to adhere to? And it's like, well, David did this, so this is why this is like this. Or do you just want like a bunch of different kinds of filmmakers and storytellers take their shot at it, and eventually at some point in that story, something's going to burst out of somebody's chest?
Right. Is it James Bond or is it Star Wars? And I think Ridley Scott really upset that by returning with Prometheus. I think he really I don't want to say he ruined it. He didn't ruin anything because I think both of his latter 2 Alien movies are really good. But he made it difficult for it to only be that. And the fact that this most recent movie is quarantined between 2 pre-existing movies.
Yeah. And that the Noah Hawley thing is like this prequel. I'm kind of shocked that this is happening because one of the things about this franchise is like, I don't think people are overly precious about it. And I do think that you could keep moving the ball forward a little bit with some interesting ideas, or it could just be like, who's the most badass horror director on the block right now? He gets to take a shot at this every 3 years.
It's so funny though, because the franchise itself is such a bear trap. Like some of the best directors of the last 30 years have tried to make movies in this franchise and have been completely,
oh my God,
bewildered. I don't want to say bungled it, but have gotten stuck. I mean,
Rennie Harlan.
Yeah, but Jean-Pierre Jeunet, like at the time, he's coming off of City of Lost Children and Delicatessen and, genuinely considered a truly visionary filmmaker. And there's some really cool stuff in Resurrection, but it's a very weird and ultimately, I think, unsuccessful movie.
Yeah.
So the idea of it being this fungible is fascinating. The other thing about it being called Alien Earth is there had long been rumored a 5th Alien movie in the chronology of the Alien story in which I think Ripley would appear and aliens would go to Earth.
This is the Blomkamp movie, right?
I guess that's what Neil Blomkamp was going to make. But
Ripley was going to be in the Neil Blomkamp movie, which he essentially like put all the art for up, right? And like has shared quite a bit about it. And then Ridley came in and was like, I'm actually making Prometheus.
So one thing I like about Kaylee Spaney's performance in Romulus is she's not trying to do Ripley at all. There's nothing that is like...
There was a moment where I was like, oh, is she going to be your daughter?
Oh. I guess that's... I wonder if they even shot something like that and took it out.
Because I was like... for some reason, the sound mix and it was very loud, but like I couldn't really also always understand the dialogue. And when she's first like at the sort of office of the mine trying to get off, and she's like, my name's Ray. I was like, did she just say her name was something Ripley? Like and then I couldn't get it out of my head. I was like, this would work technically because she would be in her 20s. Her mom did die a few cycles ago on working for Weyland-Yutani. And so it would have been kind of right around there.
Now you've got my wheels turning on that. I wonder if they wanted it to be that and decided against it at a certain point. Nevertheless, do you want Ripley to come back in any form? Is that something you want to see?
No, I don't. But I don't. I'm not. I just think that they've kind of taken that as far as it can go. And Sigourney Weaver herself was like, there's only so much to that character. We've kind of pushed it. Like, how often can she keep accidentally landing exactly where the aliens are landing? She's been cloned. She's been impregnated. She's gone through the cycles of this. I was happy that she didn't show up on the computer of the Nostromo to help them or something. And yeah, I actually feel like this is the healthiest relationship I have to a lot of like these projects out there. Is just like, I think Alien is just reliably like, they are fucking scary. I like it when they run. I like it when they appear out of the ground. I like it when they drip. I like it when they bleed. I kind of dig the vibes of all of these things. Like, I know it's kind of stupid that they would keep these dumb scientists keep being like, we better go to that homing beacon. But it's cool. Like, why are all the kids like in, stop going to Elm Street?
That's what I was just going to say. If you like slasher movies, it's easier to just get on board with this. If you only think of the Alien franchise as this sacred place where Ridley Scott and James Cameron completely redefined science fiction and action for forevermore, you're going to have more hang-ups, you know? Yeah. I don't have a lot of hang-ups about it. I had a good time. I also think, the arc of time always favors every single one of these movies. Every single one of these movies, with the exception of the Alien versus Predator movies, have been reclaimed as a kind of misunderstood masterpiece. Will Romulus ever get there? Honestly, probably will.
Yeah.
In 10 years, when we're in a cycle of
10
even
years,
worse
it's going to be
IP,
like 2 months later on Letterboxd, people are going to be like, you guys didn't understand what Fede was cooking.
You're probably right. Okay, let's rank them.
Okay.
Let's just say for the sake of conversation that Alien vs. Predator's Requiem is the worst movie ever made.
Okay.
Featuring an alien. And that Alien vs. Predator is probably the second worst movie ever made.
Yeah. So I think that what's really helpful with this would be to do tiers. I think you can do... I think there's a very obvious tier 1, which is the first 2 films. And I would be curious, are you Aliens or Alien?
I am Alien.
Alien.
Ultimately.
I am Alien as well. Okay.
You are. That's your favorite.
Yes.
It's very close.
They're very different. But and I just think that the original is one of my favorite films ever made. And I think even doing that rewatchables really like, I was like, I can hear Jimmy with this right now. Like, this is just an incredible act.
When is the Aliens rewatchables?
Well, you have to do DeGirling Limited first. Bill wanted us to wait for him for that.
That sounds fun. The one thing I found amusing rewatching Aliens again was how interested James Cameron is in weak men. How funny he finds weak men and how many of them are in these movies.
So like Paul Reiser,
and I forget the command leader's name who's on the intercom.
Gorman, yeah.
And of course Bill Paxton. Yeah. Like the like baby man
came over, man.
Everything Paxton does is elite.
Is this a bug hunt?
I think it's pretty close, but I think it's Alien and Aliens. And then you've got this quartet.
This is the most interesting part, which is like, what's 3 for you?
For me, it's Prometheus.
For me, it's Prometheus as well.
Now, I have been desperate to return to both Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection and have that moment of like, I see now. I see its greatness. I see its grandeur. And they both just feel like deeply compromised movies to me.
Yeah.
They're not very fun to watch most of the time, even though they have great moments and some great characterization. And they feel kind of fucked with. And so while I like them fine, Prometheus is a huge vision in which somebody got to follow through completely.
Yeah.
And that's the way it feels. And
I think
like
it's one of the more... I'm very heavily influenced by a lot of the writing that happened around Prometheus and a lot of the like sort of speculative criticism that happened around Prometheus that takes things that Ridley Scott throws out in interviews that didn't make it into the movie at all. Like, so basically there's this one snippet of an interview where Ridley Scott is like, Jesus Christ was an engineer and crucifying him angered the engineers, and that's why they have unleashed... I know.
That's so sick.
It's the fucking best. This is why we can't quit Ridley.
I mean, he's literally communicating though as though engineers existed in our chronological timeline.
They made Earth, and then Earth started going the wrong way. And they send an emissary, which is Jesus, and then we crucified Jesus, and they were like, "You guys are fucked."
Man, that is so good.
It's so good.
I love Ridley Scott so much.
And all the stuff with like tearing the alien coming out of the abdomen of Prometheus, all the mythological stuff of that is sick. And then I think
also just the like abortion bay sequence is unbelievable body horror filmmaking.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. I was so far on the edge of my seat, I almost like bumped into the seat in front of me when that was happening. Famously scene with Andy Greenwald after a massive Grantland party in which all three of us were deeply hungover.
Yeah.
Which was one of the coolest things I've ever
done.
Gin
floating off of
men. It was amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so Covenant or 3?
Fourth is hard.
Covenant or 3. I don't think for me that's what it's between. I think it's Covenant.
I think it's Covenant too, which I think some people would think is blasphemous, especially from us, the Fincher boys. But
I mean, it's not like Fincher's like, I love Alien 3.
It's my least favorite David Fincher movie.
Yeah.
I looked at my rankings again yesterday just to confirm. I have it last.
Yeah.
So I think
there's really cool
Covenant.
Stuff in it, and I think Charles Dance gives one of my favorite Alien franchise performances in that film. But it is a difficult movie to love. And it feels, like you said, like incredibly fucked with.
Yeah. Covenant is not perfect.
Nope.
It just has...
First 45 minutes is perfect.
It has incredibly high highs.
Yeah.
And it does have a fascinating Fassbender performance in which he's really going for the weirdness of the David character.
Yeah.
And it really makes you want to see even more so where the story goes.
I think that the two films together, I think Prometheus and Covenant, it's a fool's errand to dream of Ridley Scott director's cuts. Did we ever get the Napoleon one?
No.
Okay.
But it was rated.
Yeah.
So apparently it is going to come out at some point. I think it's 220 minutes.
In totality, the David story of him escaping the first planet, flying to the engineer home planet, dropping the goo, then taking over, and then building the xenomorphs to kill his own god or whatever.
I'll do the diddling.
Is so awesome.
Yeah.
And so interesting. And kind of now, in retrospect, very unique in blockbuster filmmaking and how brave and weird and fucked up it was. And in both of those films, it includes truly horrifying horror movie stuff that he just like is able to throw out.
The backburster.
And some of the great production design and like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
The backburster sequence in Covenant, in the first 35 minutes of Covenant, is insane.
The whole Simon sequence where she like shoots the shotgun.
Yes.
It's fucking awesome. So I think Covenant's 4 for me, and I think then I go 3 Resurrection. Although...
I think I go 3 Romulus Resurrection.
Oh yeah, I think I do too now. I hadn't even thought about where to put Romulus in, honestly.
Resurrection has a ton of fun, gory stuff. It also has the underwater sequence, which is super cool. And at the time
Brad
was
Dourif
mind-blowing.
Is like really crazy and cool in that movie, but like...
Every performance is at a pitch that I don't like. The Genet acting style, where you're sort of like wide-eyed and yelling all the time. I'm not really... Like, Dan Hedaya is terrible in that movie.
It just doesn't match Joss Whedon. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like Joss or whoever
Joss
was
Whedon
writing
wrote the
those
script. Yeah.
whoever did rewrites on it. It's just like
I think it's his script.
But it's like this like almost weird Guillermo del Toro like carnival barker performances.
Featuring Ron Perlman.
And then it's Joss Whedon sort of like rat-a-tat dialogue in places. So yeah, I think Romulus is ahead of Resurrection for me, actually. Even I just only seen it once. So
is there a world in which Romulus could get into the zone of Covenant and Prometheus?
I don't think it has the same level of ideas, although I think that I leave it with this, and I'm curious whether or not I'm curious to hear the Fede conversation because, you know, it very knowingly deals with the idea that you can't escape certain pieces of iconography or storylines from this franchise. And there is something kind of like, there's a lot of reanimation. There's a lot of like, we found a dead frozen thing in space and brought it back to life kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be a very knowing wink at the state of filmmaking, which is essentially all franchise filmmaking now. Like, I mean, like it's like all of this stuff, unless you're like making things on the margins or making an A24 movie, you're basically like, I'm making a reinterpretation of this. So I wonder how much of it...
It's true.
I wonder how much of that stuff, especially in years past, maybe the film will be improved when I'm not thinking about this shit so much, because hopefully we end a cycle where we can't possibly keep squeezing out, you know, reboots of things.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll be like, that's really sad that that's where this all ended up, was like bringing Ian Holm back to life, you know?
I think both things can be true. You know, I if they make another one of these movies with a director that I'm at least interested in, I'm gonna see. I'm gonna see any movie that they make, honestly. But even the shitty ones are Paul W.S. Anderson, who's at least interested in things and has a visual style.
I just didn't need The Predator. That was just like, I was never like, oh, I really want to see these two fight.
Yeah,
is there a director out there that you think?
No, that's a good question.
Would be
well, now okay. So here's the thing. Here's what's really weird about these movies. And I have a very obvious, straightforward answer because she's already in the system, even though they're not going to let her do this. There's never been a woman to make a movie.
So Arkasha should do it.
It's Arkasha Stevenson, who just made The First Omen, which did not do well at the box office. And so I'm not sure the 20th Century
But didn't
Studios
she make it for like $8 million? Like,
no, it was like a $30 million movie. Right. So I don't know if they're going to hand her the keys to an Alien movie, but Alien movies are all about motherhood, femininity, the fucked up nature of birth. You know, the way that our bodies transform and become disgusting and become beautiful. Like, the design of life is the very essence of the movies. Men are fine, but they don't understand anything about that. And so the fact that we now have like 9 Alien movies all made by guys is really fascinating, because most of the big franchises have become increasingly democratized. More people are getting opportunities to tell these stories. Now, Fede is a Uruguayan filmmaker. He's not just like another British guy who's come along, but it would be cool to see someone like Arkasha take on a movie like this, I think. What about you? Anybody you want to see? Bring Fincher back?
That's fucking interesting. I wonder whether or not like him doing World War Z Part 2, which never happened, was supposed to be him being like, there's like an alien, like I want to see flesh being torn from people.
It feels like he's too in the bag of his own cool lifestyle now to ever do it, but I would like to see him do one crazy franchise movie. I know that's like a stupid 13-year-old's opinion, but it would be fun to watch him try to do something like that.
I think there is a tactile intensity to the way Jeremy Saulnier makes movies that I don't know what his sci-fi movie would look like. But like when you see even the True Detective episodes he directed, when you see Blue Ruin and Green Room, and I can't wait to see Rebel Ridge, which is coming out next month. There is like a real dirty lived-inness to his movies that I think would suit this franchise. I don't know if he would get a $100 million sci-fi movie to make, though.
I'm not sure either. The next time you'll be on this show will be to talk about the film Rebel Ridge.
I did think of one person because of Isabella Merced being in this film, which was Stefano Solima.
Well, no, that's just a CR pipe dream, isn't
it? Isabella Merced is in Day of the Soldado.
Yeah, Day of the Soldado, the director of Without Remorse.
Yeah.
What if it was a Rainbow Six Alien crossover? Oh my
God, dude. Yeah.
When you watch that?
Yeah.
I would watch that. You know, Michael B. Jordan, hand-to-hand combat with a xenomorph.
It's like, I really don't care for Alien versus Predator, but Alien versus Predator versus Jack Ryan and
Tom
Mr.
Clancy's
Clark.
Men of Honor. That would be amusing. What else are you excited about with movies? Anything coming up that you're pumped for? I do have your Rebel Ridge is in September 6th. I've written down the phrase trash justice, aka garbage revenge. What do you think about that?
That is a really good idea. I was just watching Extreme Prejudice the other day.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Speaking of Walter Hill, one of the originators of the Alien franchise.
Yeah. Film-wise, what am I looking forward to? I haven't seen Sing Sing. I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about this movie that you can't really tell me anything about because you want me to go in cold.
Thanks for saying that. I was going to mention it at the end of this episode because when we come back on August 27th, Strange Darling will have already been released. This is one of my favorite movies of the year. It's directed by a guy named J.T. Mullner. It is photographed by Giovanni Ribisi, one of your favorite actors. Last seen in the end credits of Horizon Chapter 1, an American saga.
The printing press magnate. That's what I'm looking forward to. Is part 2.
I know. I wish I was going to Venice. Anyhow, Ribisi's never been the DP on a film. It is I'll just say it's a serial killer story, unlike one you've probably seen before.
Okay.
And I really, really liked it. And it stars Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner,
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's one to check out. Comes out August 23rd. But it's sicko time. Like when we come back.
I know. It's Sean and Chris's scary hours Halloween countdown.
We're gonna have a great Halloween. We're gonna have a great October. There's a lot of fucked up stuff coming. And I had a chance to see Anora, and I look forward to more people seeing Anora because that was really cool.
Is Mufasa gonna be good?
I didn't realize Anora was a Mufasa prequel. So interesting twist there. Mufasa, I mean, it's Barry Jenkins, but also digitally rendered lion talking.
How are you feeling about our levels of hype? Did you feel like going into Romulus, you were like, I've been looking forward to this so hard, and then like 10 minutes in, you were like,
No.
Okay.
I didn't have that approach.
The Gladiator 2 trailer played again last night before Romulus, and I was like, our consumer confidence remains high in this film.
I actually had the opposite experience when I saw Trap. I saw Gladiator 2 on a big screen, the trailer for the first time, and I was like, oh no.
You thought it looked kind of cheesy?
A lot of digital. A lot of digital. So you know what? I ride with Ridley.
How's your Lady Raven fanfic going?
I mean, we've been bumping it in the house nonstop. It's Lion King soundtrack, Lady Raven bangers, back and forth, back and forth. It's been good.
I hope they make a Trap 2 where it's just her as like a pop star detective. That was my favorite part.
Like a Harriet the Spy style situation. It's a good idea. You were not a big fan of Trap.
I love the first half of Trap.
Hated the conclusion.
It's just very difficult to build that many tunnels in suburban Philadelphia.
It's a good note. I have found this is maybe a different episode.
Did you guys talk about the fact that Hartnett's name is Cooper and his daughter's name is Riley, so they are Riley Cooper?
No. That's something that could only come from a native Philadelphian.
I thought that was weird. That was a weird, like if it was like her name is Iverson and his name is Allen, that would have made more sense. But I was like,
isn't Riley Cooper famously a racist?
Yeah. Well, he was, yes.
He used a certain word.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not ideal. Interesting choice. M. Night Shyamalan, a true blue Philly sports
That's
fan.
why I was like, this is not an accident, is it?
You never know. It could have
Unless
been,
it's like Cooper DeJean, their second round draft pick from Iowa.
That feels like a stretch.
Riley, I don't know.
I have found
Lincoln Riley,
the
USC coach.
I have found the fan reactions or sort of moviegoer reactions to Trap and to Long Legs to be fascinating because there's clearly a level of frustration with those movies that I didn't experience when I watched them.
Yeah,
and I'm kind of like trying to reckon why. I like that people are getting so passionate about the movies and they're getting mad in some cases. I mean, people seem really mad about Trap. I've not seen the reaction where people are like, "This is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I can't trust you anymore because you liked it." I'm actually for the first time in a long time kind of confused because there seems to be this verisimilitude issue that people seem to be hung up on that I'm honestly trying to work through because I don't go to the movies for that.
Right.
I don't go to the movies for
I certainly don't go to M. Night movies. And beyond like their setups, like pretty much since The Happening, his movies have been like seemingly communicated from outer space and then translated into something that resembles humanity, but is not like that. Like
that was what I was. I mean, the Visit and Old and Knock at the Cabin and the two, Split and Glass are all tonally and script-wise.
So weird.
In this oddity mode.
Yeah.
That is very purposeful.
Yeah.
You know, that he's decided to lean into that
but
I enjoy.
It's so funny because in Trap, when he shows up as like the usher or like Lady Raven's like assistant,
the uncle, yeah.
And he's like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, why are you the most normal movie person in this movie?
Maybe that's his
you
trap.
You do know that, you know?
That's a really good point. Well, I interviewed him for Knock at the Cabin and I was like, what a lovely guy.
Yeah.
Like he's just super normal.
He just sits courtside at Sixers games.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, Josh Hartnett needs to act like he's never been outside before.
Yeah, that's tough. Trap didn't do very well, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it doesn't, like, aren't the economics of his movies kind of like such?
Well, he pays for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really on him. Lady Raven, I think her royalties will make up the back end. It'll be fine.
Really a hot riser on my Spotify for you.
So for you, it's Sabrina Carpenter, Roan Chapel.
Chapel Roan. Good.
Chapel Roan, Jesus Christ.
I heard her for the first time.
That was the most old man moment ever. Chapel Roan, my bad.
Phenomenon, pretty good.
Okay.
Aleya.
Brat. Aleya just laughing at the 40-year-old man. What else is on your hit list?
There's a new band called Fentanyl that I really like.
Fentanyl? Are you being serious? Okay. Thanks to Fede Alvarez. Thanks to CR, of course. Thanks to Aleya Zenieris and our producer, Bobby Wagner, for his work on this episode. Next week, don't forget to check out The Hollywood Hack. And like I said, Amanda and I will be back on August 27th to talk about some sicko movies. Go see Strange Darling if you have the chance, but don't learn anything else about the movie beforehand. We'll see you soon.